Well, hello there, my friends. This is the Joyfully Prepared podcast, and I'm your host, Wendi Bergin. And today I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit. I am the chairperson for the Food Preservation Division at our local Florida Strawberry Festival competition. It's like a county fair, but it's fancy and it says Strawberry Festival. So we have what's called the neighborhood village, and that's where people come in to submit their different creations that they've been working on for the last year. So things like their crochets, their quilts, leather work, clothes that they've done, scrapbooking, and then we have the baking competition and the food preservation competition and cake decorating competition, among other types of divisions. But those are just a few. But I'm the chairperson over food preservation. So on Monday, I spent 6 hours receiving jars from the community, old and young, men and women, first time canners, decades long canners, all sorts of different people with different recipes. It's so much fun. I love these people to death. I love them so much. And I really try to convey how proud I am of them for doing this because we only had 41 submissions. We should have a lot more. It's like a huge area that people that are canning should be putting their food into the competition. It'd be so much fun. But I'm just so proud of them. And what I want to talk about today is what I learned from this competition this year. This is my third year being the chairperson. On Monday, I receive all the submission, the entries, and then on Tuesday is when we do the judging. And I'll talk about that a little longer. So it's two days of doing this, and I just think it's super fun. But we need to talk a little bit because if you are learning how to can or thinking about entering a competition, there are a few things that you really need to know. So, like I said, 6 hours, people walking in with their jars. Some people submitted just one recipe. So the rules for us were you have to submit 3 jars per recipe. So if you did a mango jam, I need 3 jars of those. But you can submit a mango jam, a strawberry jam, and an apple jelly all in the same category. There are other categories like relishes, pickles, sauces, and then canned food. Anything from carrots to soup, stew, anything along that line. I had people walking in carefully holding their jars, handwritten recipes, some of them. They were a little nervous. Some were like, I've never done this before. This is my first time canning. I had a teenage girl who was homeschooled submit a lovely jam. A young woman who had never canned before, she entered barbecue sauce. And another woman who's been canning for decades, who literally has a business canning, but she submitted for the first time in her life. She won all blue ribbons, which I think is awesome. That's so brave to do things like that. It's a big deal. Learning how to can, it's a big deal. Following a recipe. I've talked about skill stacking, learning how to can, following a recipe, filling out an entry form, showing up on the right day at the right time, because we have had people who didn't show up at the right time on the right day. So all of this is skill stacking and it's courage. And I make sure they know that. I always want them to know that they're doing a great job. So here's the part that's not as fun. I am responsible for safety. That means I have to check the processing times, jar sizes, ingredients, water bath canning versus pressure canning, and some jars can't be tasted. That means an automatic zero in that category, and I don't enjoy that part at all. But food safety is not optional because we're dealing with a big deal. We're preserving food. Now, let's talk about just a minute. A lot of people will say, well, this is how my grandma did it. And I appreciate that. Love our grandmothers, love our mamas who taught us how to can and were great examples. But the food they were canning is not the food that we are canning today. This is true. For instance, modern tomatoes, the ones we have today, are different than the ones that our grandmothers or mothers were canning back in the day. Nowadays, tomatoes are often lower in acid and they've been bred for shipping and shelf life. So that's why the USDA now requires you to add lemon juice or citric acid when water bath canning tomatoes. There was a time when people didn't. Today, we do, especially if you're entering into a competition. That does not mean that your grandma was wrong. That's not what that is. It means agriculture has changed. And we know this, and we can have a conversation about that too. But that is also the truth. Food has changed, science learned more, and guidelines have evolved based on the fact that the food is changing. Now, I talk about pH levels, and let me just pause a second and explain something really simple. When we talk about acidity and pH, here's all you need to know. pH is a scale that measures how acidic or not acidic a food is. The lower the number means more acidic, the higher the number means less acidic. And why does that matter? Because the bacteria we are worried about in canning, the really dangerous one, botulism, does not grow in high acid foods. Botulism cannot survive in properly acidic environments, but in low acid foods, it can grow without you seeing it, without you smelling it, and without you tasting it. And that's why we care about pH. Not because we're dramatic, because we're responsible. If something is acidic enough, we can safely water bath. If it's not acidic enough, it has to go in a pressure canner because pressure canners reach higher temperatures that kill harmful bacteria. So when the USDA says add lemon juice to your tomatoes, we add the lemon juice. Now, there are people online who call themselves rebel canners, and I have had my moments, to be honest with you. But here's the thing, they know the rules, they understand pH, and they understand density and heat penetration, and they choose to modify. That is their choice. But if you are new to canning, I do not recommend you learning to drive by swerving into oncoming traffic. Learn the rules first, master the rules, stay inside the guardrails. I often tell my kids, I'll say, you got to know the rules in order to be able to break the rules. If you're bringing food into a public competition where judges are going to taste it, I am the gatekeeper for that. And I read these recipes. I have a woman who has come in 3 years now, and I'm thankful that she brings her food in and she's getting better. You're supposed to write your rules out, like how you processed this can of jam, for instance. And there's an old-fashioned way that I was taught and I don't do and other people do. And again, that's their kitchen. They get to do what they want in their own kitchen. But in a public competition, you cannot do this. But you make jam, strawberry jam, we'll just say, and it gets hot. Strawberry jam, any kind of jam gets super, super hot. Well, they'll ladle it in to their jars. They'll clean the rims and put the lids on and put the rings on. And then they'll just take and not put it in a water bath canner, but they'll flip it over. And it's so hot that it creates a seal. I've never done it before, so I don't know exactly what the timing is, but that's not safe. That's not USDA guidelines. You cannot bring that jam into a public competition. And this lady, she keeps doing it. And I can judge the outside of the jar. I can judge what the jam looks like. I can judge that, but she's going to get a 0 every time for taste because I will not allow my judges to taste that food. That's just the way it is. And then in a public competition, we follow USDA guidelines, period. Not because we're fearful, because we're stewards. When you make that food, you want to make sure that, I mean, that's the whole point of preservation, right? Is to keep the food from killing people. We don't want to hurt people. And so if you've got to read the rules, you've got to understand the rules, and you've got to follow the rules according to that. I also saw some recipes where they kind of made their own recipe. And I'm okay with that as long as they know that they're processing that jar of whatever it is in the right place, like a water bath canner or a pressure canner, and for the correct amount of time. I used to make a salsa. There was a restaurant called Don Pablo's. I think they were around the country. I don't know. They had the best salsa. Loved it. And so I started making my own kind of copycat. Well, I kind of took a little bit of salsa recipe from this one, a little bit of that, and then made my own. Well, many salsas you can in a water bath canner. But when I started adding other things to it, I maybe wanted more onions or more garlic or this or that. That changes the whole dynamic of the salsa, the pH of the salsa. And now it can no longer be water bath can because I've messed with the pH. I put more non acidic foods in it. And so I had no choice but to pressure can it. For instance, I modify a salsa recipe. I put more onions in it than what it called for in the original recipe, had the proper pH, proper acidity in it so that I could water bath can it. But because I wanted more onions in my salsa, that messes up the pH level. And so I have to take that salsa and pressure can it. Now, what if I wanted to add corn and onions to that salsa recipe and I modify it that way? Well, I have to look at the corn and I have to look at the onion and which of those two ingredients need a longer processing time. If it's corn needs 15 extra minutes and onion needs 20, then I have to go with 20. I'll do another podcast episode about some of those rules, but you need to know that if you're going to be in competition as well. If you're going to modify the recipe, you also need to know how to modify the processing times and the processing medium. Is it going to be water bath canned or is it going to be pressure canned? I'll leave it at that. So here, like I mentioned, some of the things that I saw, salsa processed at 10 minutes in a water bath when it needed much longer. This person didn't process for the right amount, so they were not allowed to eat that food. Process for the same amount of time when they require different times. So let's say the pint needs to be processed for 25 minutes and the quart needs to be processed for 45 minutes, and they were processing the quart for 25 minutes. No, that's not okay. So they don't get to eat that food either. Like I mentioned, the corn, somebody added corn to their salsa and water bathed it. Nope, that lowers the acidity and it must be pressure canned. So they are small details, but they have big impact at the same time. Most of the time, it was just they didn't know. It was just they're learning and they didn't know. And so on the judging cards, we would always talk about all the good things about their entry, their food. But then if we saw something that needed to be changed, we gave them kind correction, if you will, so they know that for next time because everything's fixable. We can fix all this. This is okay. One of the other things when you're giving something in competition, you want your jar to be as beautiful as possible. So and this goes along with beauty. This next point goes along with beauty, but it also goes along with safety. One, the rings go around the lids to hold the lids in place on top of the jars, okay? After you process your jars, so they've been in the water bath or they've been in the pressure canner, you pull them out and you let them sit undisturbed for about 24 hours on your counter. Just look at them and think, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Once that's done, take your rings off and gently wash the whole jar under warm soapy water around the threads, where you twist the lid on, around the lid, be really gentle. You don't want to mess with anything. You just want to be really gentle around the top and the jar itself, all of it. You do not want to store jars with rings on. Rings are there to hold the lid in place during processing. Once the jar is sealed, the ring's job is done. So you can wash the rings and put them away. With the competition, we want you to bring the rings with you. But one of the things that I noticed was that many people processed their jars, left them and cooled them down, and the seal sealed but they never took off the rings and they never washed under the rings and around the threads. And a couple people had food kind of come out, seep out from under the lids and leave goopy everywhere. So, one of the reasons why I stopped storing rings on the jars, especially on the unwashed jars, was I made the mistake too. This is me teaching and encouraging you to learn from my mistake because I didn't know any different. But when we know different, then we do different, right? So take the rings off, wash your jar. If you leave the rings on and just label the jar and put it in your pantry, you could have a false seal on your lid. You could have food that seeped out from under the lid and now is inside of the ring, which will mold. I lost a few jars of applesauce to that because I didn't know at the time. And the sauce kind of, it's called siphoned out of the underneath the lid and under, it was gooky under the ring and around the threads of the jar. And that caused it to mold, which then I don't know, is the mold inside, outside the jar? I don't really know. So I had to throw that food away. I saw a lot of people who came in and dropped their jars off that had goop underneath the rings. They had never washed it. And their jar was yucky too. Like it was sticky and just kind of grody because I'm from the 80s and we said grody back then. Make your jar as presentable as possible. And even if you're not going to be in a competition, make your jar healthy, make it safe and pretty, and take all the ick off of it. And then label it and then put it back on the counter and then look at it and admire it for as long as you want. That's the most important part of canning. Okay. So make sure if you're entering a competition to do that. If you ever want to enter a competition, these are just little things that could boost you up a point or two. And that could be a difference between a blue ribbon, a red ribbon, or the Grand Master for all that matters. It shows you care, that you have pride, and it protects your food, right? So let me talk to you a little bit about judging. This is about the actual judging, not about the food safety, but I just wanted to kind of share something with you, kind of an inside behind the scenes thing. The judges, this is how I arrange my judges. I don't do judging. I just kind of coordinate everything and I answer questions that they may have about a recipe, processing time, is it supposed to taste like this, should it look like that? I do taste many of the foods, but the judges sit at tables. And in my case, I had 4 judges at each table, so 2 tables of 4. They taste, they talk, and they influence each other. This is my 3rd year. This one, I really noticed how they really influenced one another, not in a bad way. It's very social, very fun, very lovely. It's a very fun thing to do. If you want to be a judge for me at the Florida Strawberry Festival competition, let me know. Just hit me up. Maybe we can make something happen. So here's what I've noticed. I brought in bread and butter so they could put some jam on it. I brought in some cream cheese because we had some like pepper jams, pepper jellies, and things like that. So we put a little cream cheese on a cracker. It's got to be fun, right? All of this has to be fun. But this is something that I noticed. The winners tend to be very simple. The recipes are very simple. Strawberry jam 2 years ago. Last year was what they called a Christmas jam, which was a combination of cranberry and strawberry jam. Again, very simple. And this year was apple jelly. Apple jelly. That's it. Unsweetened apple juice, sugar, and pectin. That was it. And that won grand champion. How about that? There was a recipe, there was a jam that what was my favorite, but I don't get a vote, called sweet mango colada jam. I thought it was lovely and brilliant and was absolutely delicious. It came in 3rd. It was the apple jelly, a strawberry jam, and then this mango colada jam. Personally, I was a little disappointed. I loved it so much, but I see it now, this trend happening year after year. Simple reads as clean, balanced, classic. It's easy to agree on because everybody has these different palates, the different taste buds. And so if you come in with just a straight apple jelly or a straight strawberry jam. Now, we've had strawberry jams in the past that weren't that great. I'm not saying that, but just these clean, basic flavors, I guess. One of my favorites was a Black Forest jam, which had chocolate, dark chocolate, and cherry. That was delicious. That same person had a chocolate covered strawberry jam. I mean, there were lots of different interesting ones. We had barbecue sauces and different type of pickles, bread and butter squash pickles. That was so yellow squash. It was so yummy. It's so good. So I'm just saying there are different types of combinations, and depending on the category, we have 5 categories: jams and jellies, those kinds of things, marmalades. They're all in the same category. And we had the most delicious marmalade, but marmalade has zest in it, and zest has a bitterness to it. So you taste this lovely well, marmalade, and there's a little bitterness that comes in at the back of that taste. Well, you need to know that. And you need to know that that's the way it's supposed to taste. So if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I'm going to suggest that most mouths, most taste buds are going to be unfamiliar with it, even though it's delicious. If they find it to be any kind of off putting, they're not going to give it a high rank. So clean and simple is the way to go if you want to win a competition. That's from what I'm seeing. But I don't want you to do that if you want to have fun with your jams, your jellies, your pickles, whatever. You do something fun because that other stuff, it's not wrong. It's just human nature. No big deal. So if you're entering to win, Clean Classic often does that well. But if you're entering to grow, to do something different, to challenge yourself, be creative and have fun. Please do that. I also would suggest that maybe you enter a couple jams, but look at the other categories because those other categories don't have very many entries in them, especially the ones where it typically requires pressure canning. We had some delicious soups and stews last year and beans. Oh my goodness, they were great. But we still don't have a lot of people who are competing in those categories. So just consider that as well. If you need any kind of like ideas from me, like what should I can or whatever you might have from this podcast episode, let me know because I would love to help you because a lot of you live in the northern parts of the United States and so your competitions won't be until the summertime. So let me know if you want any other tips or tricks about this, hacks or insights. And it'll depend on, how things work in your area as well. So this is what I want to say. This is what I want you to hear. I am so proud of every single person who walked through those doors with a jar in their hands. Some have improved after a couple years of disappointment. Some have asked how to do better next year. They were humble and they were teachable. That's the spirit of homesteading. We're always learning, adjusting, trying again. That's what the whole thing is. If you're thinking about entering a competition, please do it. Please do it. You literally have nothing to lose. Read the guidelines. Every competition is going to have something, whether probably online these days, where you would read the guidelines. You might be eliminated just because you didn't read the guidelines on how they want you to present your jars. Read them again. If you have questions, call or email the chairperson. Do that. I would love more phone calls. That's what I'm here for. Use the USDA guidelines. You've got in the most of the competition rules and guidelines, they're going to link out to the USDA guidelines. So you need to know both. Process your jars correctly, wash your jars, and label them, okay? So that you know what they are. And here's the thing, even if you don't win, what? You're building a skill, you're building confidence, and you're participating in the community. That is awesome. I just think it's the best thing. And that really does matter more than the ribbon. Food preservation is not just about putting food up. It's about stewardship, a responsibility, and about honoring the people who will eat that food, right? Do it safely, do it joyfully. And maybe next year we'll see your jar on the winner's table. All right, my friends, I love you. Enjoy your day.